Welcome to Get Your Mind Right, the podcast where merchant services, digital marketing, and personal growth collide. Tune in for real talk, fresh insights, and the motivation to level up.
Good morning, John Johnson here, and welcome to Get Your Mind Right. Well, folks, this is a special episode for me today because I'm going to talk to you about what my personal theme for this year is. And that theme is stack, multiply, and win. And that's what I'm going to share with you folks today. Now, I want to give you a prologue before I dive into this here because what the gist of this is the fact that margins matter. You know, in business, especially in sports, marginal improvements reap outsized gains. Now, I want to take a couple minutes to walk through how I'm thinking about training in 2026 and what my mindset needs to be and what I need to commit to, and of course, what kind of commitment you need to ask yourself. Now, before I talk about the series itself, I want to ground this in something that's not opinion. It's math. Because in performance-driven fields such as ours, these small differences do not produce small outcomes. You may have heard this before, but in insurance sales, a commonly cited industry statistic is that the top 1% of insurance salesmen earn 85% of the income. Now, I can tell you right now, there's no way that they're working 85 times harder. Okay, but are they 85 times better at follow-up or consistency or client engagement? Well, I'll submit to you that the answer on that one's a big fat no as well. Now, what they are, though, is they are marginally better at follow-up, marginally better at consistency, and client engagement. Let's shift to golf here for a minute. So I looked this up. In 2025, there were 48 PGA tournaments. And the average tournament had a purse of $11,883,000. Now, I looked at the top place winners from the average tournament on here in terms of money available, and that was the Byron Nelson CJ Cup. The purse for that one was $9.9 million. If you're unaware, a PGA tournament has 4 rounds with 18 holes per round for a total of 72 holes played in 4 days. So par for all 4 days is generally around 288 strokes. Now, who won this tournament was a guy named Scotty Scheffler. He shot 31 strokes under par. That means that he took 251 strokes. So if you go down this list, you look at the guys that were 11 under, there was a 6-way tie for 39th place. Now, each one of these guys pocketed just north of $40,000. So let's do the math on this. That 11 under means that it took them 277 strokes for 72 holes. So if you compare that to the 4-way tie for 29th place, okay, you needed to shave 2 strokes off your 277. All right, so think about that for a minute, what that really means. So it's 2 strokes. So if you just chipped a foot or 2 closer to the pin on the green, you might have 1-putted the hole instead of a 2-putt. You know, that's just 2 times over the course of 275 strokes, or 1 motion that you're a little bit better every 135 strokes. It's not much. That marginal skill improvement, you would have taken home $66,330, which is a 64% improvement over what you got, which was your $40,000 payday. So I want to take a second look at the guys that tied for 29th place. Now, if they do the same motion as the guys that tied for 39, that would have moved them up to a tie for 15th place. So that extra 2 strokes off, they'd have taken home another $136,000. That's a whopping 100% increase in their payday. Now, I'm telling you all this because in performance-based careers like ours, this pattern is always the same. Marginal skill improvement creates exponential reward. And that defines the population of most of the folks listening to this podcast today. And that reality is the foundation of what I want to get done in 2026. The theme, again, is stack, multiply, win. Now, for me, it's not motivational language. It's an operating philosophy. In these performance-driven fields, being 5% almost never pays 5% more. It pays like double, or 5 times, or 10 times more, just like what you see in golf. Marginal skill improvement creates exponential reward. Now, I got a guy I work with, and he uses this phrase all the time. he challenges people to get a little bit better every day. That's the cousin to this notion. It's about stacking, multiplying, and winning. And what I want to talk specifically about today is winning in the margins. Now, a lot of people, they're under a mistaken belief because they believe that winning happens in the big moments, during the big presentations, the big deals, the big breakthroughs. I'm here to tell you it doesn't. Winning happens in the margins. It happens in that 5 minutes that you've protected when everything else is pulling at you. It happens in that voicemail. You actually take the time to think through before you send it. That follow-up you sent, wouldn't it just been easier to skip it or to push it off until tomorrow? Or that extra question that you ask instead of launching into another pitch. Now, the mistake folks make is these moments that I'm describing here, they look and they feel small. And because of that, they sometimes feel optional. But I'm here to tell you they're not. This is the difference between staying busy and building momentum. Now, here's the real problem. A lot of reps don't lose because they lack effort. They lose because they live in the wrong lane. They live in urgency. Now, urgency work is always easy to identify because it is screaming for attention. You got calls coming in. You got scheduling issues. You got people saying, hey, can I send you this real quick? Can you look at this? You got last minute client requests. You got inbox alerts lighting up all day. Now, on the other side of this, important work whispers. It doesn't interrupt you. It waits. It's because that quiet work is about building new relationships. It's about refining your follow-up, about crafting better outreach, about leaving intentional voicemails and asking better questions. Now, because this urgent work is loud, a lot of people spend their day reacting. It feels productive. It feels even responsible. But the truth of the matter is that urgent work keeps you employed, but important work is going to make you wealthy. If you're not familiar with this, there's a thing called the Eisenhower Grid. It's named after General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who commanded the Allied forces in Europe in World War II and was later a 2-time president. Eisenhower boils situations one faces into 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is the urgent and important. These are the fires, the scheduled meetings, the loud things, the things that happen today. And your next is your important but not urgent. These are the quiet ones, the prospecting, follow-up skills, skill building, voicemails. Now we've got urgent but not important. These are inbox cleanup, internal chatter, administrative noise. And then you got neither. It's not urgent and it's not important. And these are low or no value or even negative value distractions. Now, the best reps that I know live in the quadrant of important but not urgent, because that's where pipelines are built and that's where the dreams are realized. I'm going to give you a simple example here. Rep A and Rep B work the same hours. At Rep A, he spends the day putting out fires. Every email gets answered immediately. Every call returned on the spot. These reps finish the day tired but satisfied. They're busy all day. Now Rep B, well, he blocks 45 minutes every morning. No inbox checking, no interruptions, just positive outreach, leaving voicemails that earn callbacks, sending emails that start conversations, and client check-ins that open doors to new opportunities. Well, let's see how they're doing in 90 days. Well, Rep A, who's been super busy, he's exhausted, burned out, and flat. And Rep B, well, he's energized and so is his pipeline. These are 2 reps working the same hours but have a very different focus. Now we're going to fix this problem for you by providing you your starter kit to winning in the margins. Think of this as the push to get you started. Every day, I want you to identify one important but not urgent action and protect it like you would an appointment. Okay, pick one of these. Leave 5 intentional voicemails. Send 5 curiosity-driven texts. Write 5 high-value follow-up emails. That's it. I'm not requiring or asking any heroics here whatsoever. Just consistency. Now, once you do this for 6 months, and you'll find those small margin moments multiply. They create those callbacks. They create conversations, opportunities. You find yourself with momentum. And once you protect your time for what matters, next question becomes very simple. How do you use that time to stack, multiply, and win? Now, This podcast day, it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to give you some assignments throughout this, and I'm going to recap them at the end. Now, what I also encourage you to do is to find an accountability partner. Get one of your friends, one of your coworkers to listen to this podcast with you. And this will be the best thing you can do for yourself and for your friend in 2026. And your first assignment is, if my results reflect my habits, which habit is costing me the most right now? I want you to ask yourself that, and I want you to write the answer down, a place that's conspicuous and a place you're going to look at it again. So let's go back to the deals. Where do I actually win these deals? Well, I'm going to win them in the micro moments. Now, what this is about is these micro moments. They are small actions that most people rush through, like the voicemail, the text, the email follow-up. And this is where the average reps fade and elite reps separate. Let's start with voicemail. 95% of sales voicemails go unheard or unreturned. Not because people hate voicemail, but because most voicemails give them no reason to respond. They're saying things like, hey, just checking in, or following up, or wanted to touch base. And my personal favorite, just want to see where you are on this. Now, this is the, just want to see where you are on this. I have great personal contempt for it because it was my standard lame follow-up for many years. Now, when you think about it, there's nothing much more lame you could say to a prospect than this. What exactly does this mean? Just wanted to see where you're on this. It means absolutely nothing. It's nonsense. Now, all these messages say one thing to the listener. This call's for me. It's not about you. Now, on the other hand, a winning voicemail earns a callback. It doesn't ask for one. The principle here is simple. You want to be specific, you want to be relevant, and you want to be brief. You're not trying to explain anything. What you are trying to do is to create curiosity strong enough to trigger an action, which in this case is a callback. So here's your structure. You lead with value. Say, hey, Bob, I got an idea that might help you. Then you build some curiosity, something that we saw work with another team in your space. And then a very clear call to action to finish. Bob, give me a call back at this number. I promise it'll be worth 2 minutes of your time. So let's put this all together. Hey, Alex, quick idea on reducing your accounts receivable from 33 days to 3 days. Call me back when you get a second. It's worth it. So let's break this down again. I'm leading with value. I'm going to reduce their accounts receivable from 33 to 3 days. The curiosity is it's worth it, and the call to action is call me back. Now, I want to point out here, it's the same length as the super lame just checking in to see where you are on this. Only it is going to have a completely different outcome that you can expect. Now, I ratted myself out earlier on lame follow-ups. And what that does is provide me the space to call out many folks listening in on this podcast today. And these are people that call and do not leave a message. You know who you are, and you know you will not admit you are one of these people. I've heard every excuse in the world why you do this, and all these excuses have one thing in common. Now, not only does this method not work, but calling someone repeatedly and not leaving a voicemail is one of the fastest ways to kill a deal. Because, from your client's point of view, all they see is a missed call. There's no context. There's no value. There's no reason to respond. Just a number showing up again and again. Now, the first time it hits them, it's pretty neutral. Second time, it may get a little annoying. By the third time, you've crossed over into the stalker realm. Now, for you folks that are doing this, you likely already know that your method produces poor, if any, results. Now, my theory is that you've always done it this way and you don't know a better way. Well, guess what? Now you can no longer say that. One thing that matters more than most people realize when leaving a voicemail is your tone. Now, before you hear that beep, smile. Not metaphorically, literally smile. Now, what's going to happen is your energy is going to transfer before your words do. If you sound rushed, unsure, apologetic, that's what they're going to hear. And confidence travels through the phone onto the recorded message. Let's move on to texts and emails. So here's the situation. Your prospect is drowning in messages. Scores of sales emails a week, sometimes a day. Trainloads of texts. Most of these emails are long. almost all of them explain way too much. And the sad fact is the majority get deleted without even being read. Now, the energy for sending these, it's wasted because the goal of the message is to convince. That is a failed strategy. The goal is to open a conversation. Brevity plus curiosity equals winning. So here's your formula. I want to create curiosity, I got to make it relevant, and I want a clear call to action. I'm going to start off. Hey, quick question. Are you planning to tackle payment costs this quarter? Or, hey, if I could show you a way how similar business cut chargeback issues by 30%, would that be worth a 10-minute chat? Now, you'll notice what's missing on both of these emails. There's no long explanations. There's no long stories of who your company is. There's no long stories of who you are. There's no attachments. There's no links. There's no pressure. Because the goal here is not to push, it's to invite. Let's talk about cadence now, because consistency matters. Now, when I have a contact with someone, I'm going to always follow up within 24 hours. And if I don't get a response, I'm going to quickly give them a soft bump after a couple days. Hey, Bob, just circling back on this idea from a couple of days ago. Is this worth a quick chat? After a week, I'm going to reframe the curiosity. I'm going to go back and say, hey, Bob, just checking in. Where do you stand on this? Okay, I did that for comic relief here, and still the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Don't ever ask them where they stand on this. I'm actually going to say, hey, Bob, this initiative we talked about the other day, it seemed like you were interested in it. Did it get moved to later in the quarter, or did the timing just get tight? Now, this one I just gave you, it's got a lot higher incidence of working because it assumes professionalism, not rejection. Now, here's the discipline that most reps skip, and that is tracking. They don't pay attention to replies. That's very, very important because patterns tell you what resonates. When certain phrases get responses, reuse them. If you're finding something is falling flat, you're not getting responses to, drop it. This messaging, it's a living system. Pay attention, get a little bit better, and win in the margins right here. Let's talk about follow-up discipline because that's where deals are quietly lost. Now, you may have heard this before, but it's true. 80% of the deals close after the 5th follow-up. And that 80% of deals that actually close, they require between 5 and 12 follow-ups. Most reps stop after the 2nd. Not because they don't care, it's because they run out of value. And I think, once again, a lot of times they quit following up because they don't know what to say. They're tired and weary with another phone call that ends with just checking in to see where you are on this. Now, I'm here to tell you the money's in the follow-up, but only when that follow-up adds value or adds something new. Every follow-up should answer one question in the prospect's mind. Why should I respond now? So here are some value add options here. When you're following up on an email, share a relevant case study or offer a short insight. Okay, if you saw a trend, you saw an article, send a link to it, just a short message. Say, Bob, saw this trend today and I thought of our last conversation. And the last thing is to reframe the problem. You might say, I remember one of the things that we talked about is you were struggling with Google reviews. Here's a quick perspective that might help. Now, let me give you a real life example. There are a number of folks that I know that are absolute monsters on follow-up. Now, the story I'm about to tell you, I've heard the same version of it over and over and over. They follow up and follow up and follow up, and eventually the prospect replies. And they say something, I've been meaning to call you. Man, you just kept showing up. I got another guy I work with. He likes to say that leads never die. Reps just stop following up. Now, when you add relevance and value to this equation, you're going to multiply your success. And my friends, that is not luck. That is discipline. Because consistency earns trust and value earns attention. Now you've got both. You must have both. And this is also the very keen difference between being persistent and being remembered. Let me anchor this. The difference between average and elite isn't effort only. It's execution in the margins. Let's plug a motivation into the equation. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can make calls when they're feeling great, they're feeling motivated. But sometimes you need a little extra juice if you're making calls. Let's talk about the other side when your motivation is not high. Well, anyone can send follow-up emails when their motivation is low. Same things with text. Now, elite reps know this, and they're going to win in these micro moments because they're going to treat these voicemails like opportunities. They're going to treat the follow-ups like assets. They're going to show up prepared when others just rush through it to get it checked off the list here. But even perfect execution can break down if you're asking the wrong questions. So when you want to know how to win in the margins with action, the next step is learning how to win them with questions. That's where transactional reps stop and transformational reps take over. This is what small actions and big outcomes are about. This is the definition of stacking, multiplying, and winning. So I want to address a skill that separates good reps from great ones, and that is questions. I'm not talking about pitching, presenting, or explaining. I'm talking about great questions. I know lots of people that have pitch fever. They are constantly pitching when they should be asking questions. A couple things here. Questions are not interrogation. They're illumination. Now, a bad question, you're going to force your client to defend their position. A great question makes them to reflect. In the moment that client stops thinking about your offer and starts thinking about their pain or their goal, a conversation changes. You stop selling. They start discovering. That is the very essence and the power of the right question. A lot of reps talk way too much because they're afraid of silence. Elite reps ask better questions because they trust the process. They understand that clarity closes more deals than persuasion ever will. Let's start with trial closes. Now, a trial close is not a hard close. It's a temperature check. Its purpose is to gauge alignment and readiness without any kind of pressure. It's about confirming you are on the same page with your client. It checks. Does your client see value? Are they tracking with you? What, if anything, is holding them back? Think of it like tapping the brakes, not slamming on them. Here's a few examples. Hey, Bob, how does this fit in what you were already planning? Or, if we could deliver that outcome, would that solve most of the challenge? How about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is this aligned with what you need right now? These questions work because they don't corner your client. They invite honesty. They keep momentum while giving you critical information. Let's talk about one of my favorite fun subjects, and that is bad trial closes. Now, I'm putting this at number 1 because it is the absolute worst and the most damaging. And that trial close question is, so, what do you think? Well, how many reasons do I hate this? Let me count the ways. So let's start with the top. So first of all, it's vague and it's lazy. It gives your prospect or your client no direction. It tells you nothing about readiness, objections, or the next steps. And last, but certainly not least, this is one of the worst things you can ever say to a prospect. Why? Well, it invites polite, non-committal responses like, looks good, or I need to think about it. You may actually kill your deal with this one single line. You have practically invited the prospect to think about it. You may have just put yourself in an endless loop of follow-up that never ever closes. Now, the big problem with this question, it seems warm and fuzzy and innocent and safe, but it's not. It's deadly. It is the momentum killer. Bad trial close number 2. Does this make sense? Why it is bad? It checks your explanation, not their interest. You're also going to find that a lot of people are going to say yes, even when they're unconvinced, unconfused, and they don't follow what you're saying. It doesn't make sense. So why in the world will they say yes? Well, they may have tuned out by now, or they don't want to appear stupid by saying no. And the last thing it does fatally here is it shuts down honesty because it puts the prospect in a position to agree politely. Just because a prospect understands something does not mean that they want it. Bad trial close number 3. Are you interested? Why it's bad? Well, it's too binary and it's too early. It triggers defensiveness and an easy not sure or maybe later. And it frames the conversation as a sales decision instead of a business decision. Now, interest here and are you interested, it is a weak metric. Alignment and urgency are what matters. Now, if a question does not tell you where your deal stands or what to do next, it's not a trial close. And there are great reasons why trial closes matter. They test readiness without triggering defensiveness. They surface objections early instead of at the end. They also show confidence because confident reps are not afraid of the answer. What? How can that be? Why? Well, the reason why is there are no bad answers. A perceived bad answer is really more information for you to process and advance. These perceived bad answers actually help you. If you're going down the wrong path, the prospect will tell you this. This gives you an opportunity to pivot down the right path without babbling on your pitch endlessly long after the prospect's already tuned you out. Now, without these things, the prospect's going to politely listen to your pitch, thank you, and graciously let you know to do what? You got it. They're going to think about it. And this is exactly where you do not want to be. Let's pivot to magic questions. First, let's define it. So the purpose of the magic question is to reveal truth and shift perspective. The timing for these is early to mid conversation. Your function is to help the prospect think differently about their situation. The outcome we want is to get insight, self-discovery, and emotional clarity. Now, magic questions, they surface pain, priorities, and consequences. They are exploratory. They are specifically not trying to move the deal forward just yet. They're trying to uncover what actually matters. And that, of course, is where the magic happens. We want to reveal intent to help the prospect say, I did not realize that was the real issue. So here's a few. What's stopping you from moving forward right now? Bob, if nothing changes the next 90 days, what does that mean for this year's goals? Bob, what's the cost of waiting here? Now, each one of these questions does two things. First, it forces reflection. Your client has to pause and think. And second, it surfaces the cost of inaction. And that's critical because people don't necessarily change when they understand a problem. This is so important, I'm going to say it again. People do not necessarily change when they understand a problem. Now, I'm going to pivot here and go to your personal life here. And I want you to think about this. For example, how many people that you know personally are staying in bad or unhealthy relationships? How many people do you know have self-inflicted health problems? Now, how many of these people know that they have a problem? Okay, now, some number approaching 100% is the correct answer here. They know they have a problem, yet they still won't make a change. So what causes someone to change? Well, they change when and only when staying the same is more painful than moving forward. This is the most important concept today about sales and about human nature. I have yet to meet another human who is not governed by this concept. Relating to magic questions is magic questions don't create pressure. They reveal reality. Let's talk about urgency now because this is where many reps get uncomfortable because in the context of sales, urgency is widely misunderstood. Urgency is not pressure. Urgency is clarity. Let's take a couple minutes to delineate the two. Now, pressure, it's all about what you want. Urgency is what the client stands to lose by waiting. Now, pressure, it pushes for a decision, while urgency pulls the truth out into the open. True urgency is not created by deadlines, discounts, or repeated follow-ups. It's created when the client clearly understands the cost of inaction. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story when I was a young sales rep. I was about 25, and we had a really good product line, but we had a specific product that I got really, really good at. You know, I understood the qualification process. I understood how to ask the great questions and how to also build that urgency with the client. Now, in this product, I had a high first call close ratio. And once again, if it was qualified, I was certainly selling it by the second deal. Now, if you've ever been in this situation, you develop a swagger. It's what's called an extremely high level of confidence. So, walked into this appointment the first time, and I already knew the guy was qualified. I already knew the details before I met with him. So I'm going through it. Everything's going as planned. getting ready to the urgency part, and the guy just dramatically drops his head. He does a palm plant into his eye socket. He's pushing really hard. He's rubbing around. Kind of leans forward and gradually raises his face up to me, and he said, "Hey, John, is this one of these deals at the end of it, if I don't say yes, I'm an idiot?" Well, I was completely caught off guard by this response, and I reflexively said no. I took a couple seconds to process this, and I inadvertently laughed, and I said to him, I go, "Well, I take that back, but on the other hand, I don't know you well enough to call you names." Now, the moral of the story here is, until a client sees that waiting is more expensive than acting, the solution is going to feel optional. Once they understand this, movement feels responsible. The client feels like they need to justify why they are not saying yes to your solution, just like my little story I told you. This bears worth repeating. The client feels like they need to justify why they are not saying yes to your solution. Just like my friend here in this little story I told you. By the way, this has a happy ending. I did get a signature on the paper that day. Now, all these reasons though, this is why urgency only works after clarity exists. And if you apply that urgency before the client understands the problem, it's going to feel forced. If you apply urgency after they understand the problem, it's going to feel helpful to them. This is a very common misnomer in sales. The rep does not manufacture urgency. You cannot manufacture urgency. What a good rep does is reveals that urgency. And when that urgency is revealed correctly, the conversation stops being about selling, it starts being about solving. Because true urgency happens when that client realizes that their problem costs more than your solution. Until that moment, everything's going to feel optional. Now, here's a simple framework to create ethical urgency. The first thing you want to do is quantify the pain. Hey, Bob, you mentioned you're losing calls because you're not on the first page of Google. What's that worth to you in revenue? Now, the problem is no longer abstract, it's measurable. Second, I want to reframe time. If we wait a quarter, that's going to be 6 more lost deals according to your math here. What's the opportunity cost of that? Now you've put momentum towards the problem. Time becomes the enemy here. And the third thing is to lead to action. You know what, Bob? Let's start protecting those outcomes right now. Now, I want you to take note of what was not done here. No threat, no rush, no manipulation. You clarified. Now, let me give you an example. This is a situation I hear a lot in merchant services. I'll have reps that will tell me this. They pitched a dual pricing deal to a merchant. And just for the sake of argument here, let's say they're saving them $1,500 a month. Everything made sense logically, but the merchant, well, he just kept stalling. Can't get them to move. Is this you? Has this happened to you? Now, you solve this by asking him one question. Say, Bob, I first met you 3 months ago. Now, if you delay this another 90 days, how much will this cost your bottom line? So he stops talking for a second. He does the quick math. He says, I don't know, I guess according to what you said, $4,500. Something non-committal like that. Now I'm going to come back. I'm going to say, so Bob, with the additional $4,500 since I met you 3 months ago, a total of $9,000? Nothing about my offers changed here. What the client has heard has changed because he's finally saw the cost of waiting. And that's what great questions do. They don't convince, they reveal. And now here's where this becomes a skill, not just an idea. And how do I develop this skill? Well, I got to practice, okay? I can have intentions and I can think about this up to the wazoo. But my big problem is I do not rise to the level of what's in my head and what my intentions are. What I do is I descend to the level of my training. Now, let me anchor this. When you ask better questions, you earn better answers. And better answers close deals. Now, this is how you move from transactional conversations to transformational ones. And now that you know how to ask better questions, the final step is turning all this into a daily rhythm. A rhythm that keeps you sharp, a rhythm that keeps you consistent, and a rhythm that makes winning in the margins automatic. These are small actions that lead to big outcomes, which leads to stacking, multiplying, and winning. So everything we've talked about so far today only matters if it becomes repeatable, because skill without consistency is just potential. Consistency is what turns ability into results. Now, your goal here is not to work longer hours. It's to install a rhythm inside the hours you already have. Now, here's a simple daily framework. You start with the morning. 15 minutes, that's it. And this is proactive outreach time for you. I'm not checking my inbox. There's no meetings during this period. There's no office noise, no distractions. And what I'm going to focus on is leaving voicemails that earn callbacks, follow-ups that add value, and texts that open conversation. This is where pipelines are quietly built before your day gets loud. Now next is midday. This is just 10 minutes. And I want you to focus on making only one, just one, intentional client call. This is not to pitch, not to update, but to ask one great question, a question that creates clarity, uncovers urgency, and that moves the conversation forward. You don't need volume here, you need precision. Just one call. And then your afternoon, toward the end of the day, I want 10 minutes to reflect. Reflect on what worked for you today, what got responses, and what created movement. This is where your improvement happens. If you don't reflect, you're just going to repeat what you did. Now, when you reflect, you refine. The next step is to systematize it. Now, the good news here is to systematize this, you don't need complex tools. You just need visibility. You track 3 things here: your number of voicemails left, your callbacks earned, and how many questions you asked to unlock new information. That's it. This is as low tech as it gets, folks. You get a notepad and a pen by your phone, and you add tick marks to each item. And these 3 numbers are going to tell you everything about your execution in the margins. The purpose of this is not to judge yourself, it's to learn. Because patterns don't lie. They show you where to double down and where to adjust. Now, let's cut to the punchline here. You don't need new hours. What you need are new habits inside your existing hours. That's how you build momentum, quietly, consistently, and intentionally. Now, imagine for a second what happens when this stops being an individual effort and becomes a team standard. Imagine you're surrounded by an entire team protecting those margin moments, entire team asking better questions, an entire team following up with discipline, an entire team sharing what is working. Now, if you don't work inside a team, that's why it's so important to have an accountability partner and to share these wins with each other. Because when you do that, that's when results multiply, that's when your personal culture shifts, and that's when you winning becomes predictable. That's when it happens when you commit to winning in those moments with your partner. That's when you stack, that's when you multiply, and that's when you win. Let's zoom out and take a look at the big picture. Because winning in the margins, it's not about massive change. It's about small improvements done consistently. This week, I want you to get 1% better at follow-up, 1% better at questions, and 1% more intentional in the moments that most people rush through. We want to get 1% better every week because these small gains, they don't add up, they multiply. And over a year, that is hundreds of new conversations for you, new opportunities, new pipeline. Not because anyone worked harder, but because they executed better in the margins. That's how people go to the next level. And here's the truth, it's not magic, it's just math and it's discipline. So here's your call to action. This week, choose one margin to master. Whether it's voicemails that earn callbacks, or texts that open conversations, or questions that uncover urgency, pick just one. Commit to getting better at that one thing. Track it. Pay attention to what works and learn from what doesn't. Share the wins, share the callbacks, share the conversations that moved yours forward. Because this momentum you're creating, it's contagious. If you got an accountability partner on this and you've raised your standard, well, guess what? Your partner's going to go up. Or even better, he's going to raise his standard. And you've got to run a little bit harder to keep up with him now. Everyone wins. This is how you turn skill into consistency. Consistency into confidence, and confidence into outcomes. This is winning in the small moments because the big results will take care of themselves. Stack, multiply, and win. So, wrapping up here, your call to action is to ask better, follow up better, and improve small actions. I appreciate you tuning in and spending this time with me today. I'll see you here on Friday for the mailbag.